So, just because I'm still talking about state government a little bit, just wanted to highlight some real basics from high school, how a bill becomes law. Essentially, a bill has to start on one side of the House, either the Senate or the House of Representatives. So here it's the House of Representatives. It goes to then the House when Speaker assigns a bill to a committee, and then the bill goes to a committee. What most people don't understand is this is pretty much, for 99% of legislation, this is it right here, okay? That's why we have lobbyists on our staff. We have 2 lobbyists. Legislation is all done behind the scenes, right? When people think when they go to a hearing, a lot of times that's where the public has a chance to come and testify and give their input. 99% of the time, the deal's already done before it ever gets to a hearing. And that's why you have to have lobbyists, because they're going behind the scenes educating the legislators on the issues, because they don't understand all this annexation, special district, county, city stuff. They just don't. And so that's why you have to be proactive. You have to be in there educating them, helping them make a decision, or encouraging them on your position before you ever get to the hearing. So once it gets, especially if it gets to the House committee and it has a hearing and it actually makes it to the floor, then it's really already a done deal. Very rarely will something actually make it to a vote unless everyone knows how the vote's going to turn out. Once in a while it will, but most of the time everyone knows how it's going to turn out. And then, of course, once it passes out at one side of the House, it goes to the other and goes through the same process again. So, it's very cumbersome, thank goodness, because there's thousands and thousands of bills that get put out there every legislative session, and believe me, most of them are not good for anybody, in my opinion. Some are, but most of them just kind of wreak havoc. So now I'm going to talk about counties. Now, I told you that counties don't oversee districts. They're not in charge of you, okay? But they are in charge of certain aspects. Formation, so the counties do oversee the formation process of a district. They do oversee the elections, as far as that, when you have your board elections come up, et cetera. That's where you give your petition, or, yes?
On the district formation,
Uh-huh.
and excuse this very basic question, do they, like with our particular special one, we have zones in which we represent a particular zone. Now, does the special district or does the county set up the zones?
When you create the district, that's when you would have created those zones. And only certain type of districts can have zones. Not all can. So that's just part of the process when you draw up the boundaries and you submit all that to the county. That's all work that the district has to do. The county's only job is then to say, yeah, we approve it. It looks okay, and we'll allow it to go forward onto the ballot. Okay? The county assessor's office, the county collects all the taxes for all local governments within the county, and that's where a lot of misconception comes from with districts. Sometimes, even districts that have been on a board a long time will think that the county has jurisdiction over them, because the check that they get for their property taxes comes from the county. Every November they get this big check, but the county's only role is they're collecting it for you. It's just a service they provide. County roads, of course, courts, land use. The county is in charge of land use in unincorporated areas. Cities are in charge of land use in incorporated areas and cities. Special districts have no land use authority. That's something you have no authority to do. And we've had big lawsuits at special districts insurance services over districts thinking that they're in the land use business. I'll give you an example. The biggest one we've had was a small water district around a beautiful lake on the coast. The water district people that were on the board, they didn't want any new development in their area. They liked it the way that it was. They loved their lake, and they thought, it's already good. We don't need new people here. Well, the county has the authority for land use, and the county had already plotted certain houses for development and had already given them building permits. Well, the water district board essentially went, when those people came to get a hookup, they said, no, we're not going to hook you up, because we think if we hook you up, you new people are going to pollute the lake, and then the lake is going to be ruined for all of us, and therefore, no, we're not going to do that. That is a land use decision. You cannot do that. If you have water and you can hook somebody up, you have to do it. And so as a result, you know, $500,000 later, the district, well, SDIS had to pay that out. And again, not to pick on those California people, because I was born in California. My relatives were all from Oregon, though. I'm really not one of those people. But anyway, you know, it was some rich, it was a very wealthy person who moved into that area that had that building permit. And that's what I mean. You know, this was a closed club for a long time. People got along great. This new person came in and said, I don't like the rules that you've all set up for yourselves. I want you to play by the rules that this legislature has created, and that means you have to hook me up, and they're right. So don't just create your own rules to live by. Cities. Cities, again, yeah. Uh-huh. Well, road districts are kind of different in that way. There's always exceptions. Yeah, but every district has their own operating statutes. So 198 gives the authority to exist in Chapter 198 of law. And then every type of district has its own chapter in law, which then goes out and specifies what you can do and what your authorities are, et cetera. Road districts are one of those that do have a tighter connection with the county than most other types of districts. Cities, land use again I mentioned, annexation, cities, there's one of the biggest battles, and there's actually a big battle going on right now at the legislature that we're involved in, is annexation battles between cities and districts, okay? And that's actually, I'll get into later, why one of the reasons SDAO was created. If you're on the city side of things, you believe that cities should provide all municipal services, and that special districts are a hindrance to cities' growth. Because if you have a situation where the people that live outside the city are getting all the basic services, they're getting their water, their sewer, their fire, other things that they want and need, and they feel like they can control, then why are they going to want to annex to the city and pay city property taxes so that they can't, you know, cut their own trees down, right? And so there's no willingness then of those people to annex into the city, which then drives the city crazy because that keeps them from growing and generating more revenue. So there's always that tension between the two. County courts, of course, urban renewal. Cities have a power to create urban renewal districts, so do counties. And essentially what they do is they can freeze valuation in a certain area and take that money and then use that money to create economic development. That's created a lot of tension too between districts and cities, because special districts don't have any ability to have input on if one of those is created. And where that creates an issue, of course, is if a district is in that area where those taxes are frozen, it can't get those tax revenues. Where it especially becomes problematic, in our opinion right now, and a lot of tension is, the idea behind this was the city would take those monies, use it to invest in new facilities and infrastructure that are going to bring business to the community. That way it's going to raise the assessed value and everybody's going to benefit. But because of kind of, yeah.
I didn't want to interrupt you.
Sure.
Urban renewal issue brought to mind system development things, charges sometimes which are used for specific types of infrastructure improvements, you know, with development or
right.
urban boundary growth and these types of things, where you need to have the infrastructure, like in our case it would be parks and a recreational space.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any, do you have any insight into the system development fees, and do people, do agencies, different districts have to compete for those with the cities?
I'll get to that I got a slide on that in a little bit that I'll address. Okay? So remind me if I forget to address your issue. But what can happen on the urban renewal is now sometimes the cities, because they're all struggling for money like everyone else, will use those monies to then build a new city hall or a public building that's never going to be on the tax rolls. And so that makes everybody else mad, because you're taking tax money away from them to then build a public building. So who regulates special districts then? If none of these other governments are out there controlling you, who controls you? And that, I get that call all the time from angry people in your communities. You know, first they think we're a regulatory body, so first they'll call, say, the PUC, and the PUC say, well, we can't do anything. They'll call the county says, you can't do anything. They'll say, call Special District Association, they call us, and we can't do anything. Well, what can I do? I am so furious at these people. Well, you can run for the board of directors. Right? My laser thing, oh, run for the board of directors. Well, I don't want to do that. You know, that's time consuming. Who wants to do that? Well, that's who runs the district. I mean, that's who has control of the district, the board of directors. But anyway, that's who, and then the statutes, like I mentioned, here's just some examples. Fire districts, ORS 478, Parks 266. So if you don't know the chapter that you're regulated under, you need to get a copy of that, and your board needs to be familiar with that, okay? You can go to SDAO.com, and they'll have a link there to the statutes for all types of districts. And the thing that's unique about special districts that's different than cities is special districts, their powers are prescriptive, meaning if it doesn't say you can do it in statute, you can't do it as far as your authority. I got a call, you know, probably 6 months ago from a little road district. And this road district it had been formed out of a homeowners association. Okay, because a lot of times you form these districts because you're having a hard time in, say, an association getting people to pay their dues. But if you form a district, then everybody's going to be taxed and they have to tax. But sometimes when that happens, the board members don't make a shift mentally about that they've changed, that they're now not a private entity, they're now a public body. And so this small district calls and they said, we're a road district and we want to make sure that our swimming pool is covered. Okay? Said, well, you're a road district. You can't have a swimming pool. Well, we do have a swimming pool. No, your homeowners association, I assume, has your swimming pool. If you have the swimming pool, that's a big problem. Because no, you're not covered. Because you can't do that legally. You can't own and operate a swimming pool. So you're going to have to form a park and recreation district or something like that if you want to have a swimming pool. But, you know, you can't do it. Of course, the board of directors has committees that you have to form, primarily being the budget committee. There's a whole local government budgeting process that you have to follow. And ultimately, who's in charge of you? It's the tax and ratepayers, the people that elect you, of course. And again, no land use authority for a special district.